It's another video about Cracker Barrel. I've got some skin in the game. I worked there for 7 years. I started there the day after my 16th birthday washing dishes. 2 years later, I worked my way all the way through the kitchen, and I was a corporate trainer. I met Uncle Herschel many times. I met the founders, president, senior vice presidents. They were all diligently committed to the quality of the food, the cleanliness of the restaurant, and the appearance of their employees. What I'll show you in the next few minutes is how this company has changed so dramatically. Where are we at? Our approach to ESG. And so this is their 2021 report. You know, they put a lot of effort into this. And where are we at? Right here. Oops, got back. Diversity, equity, inclusion. There's also something in here about unconscious bias training. I'm not quite sure what that is. Moreover, one of the groups that they support, this is their culture and inclusion in the workplace. You click on that. Oh, they've taken it down. So instead, Cracker Barrel now has a section dedicated to, where are we at? Culture and belonging. So it used to say culture and inclusion, and this has been cleaned up in the last several days since all of this has come around. I had a 2-hour phone call last night with a friend of mine that still works at a Cracker Barrel. He's been there for 15 years. I asked him, hey man, I've read a lot of comments on a lot of people's Cracker Barrel videos saying the food's gone downhill. And he said, oh, let me talk to you about it. He said the biscuit. I asked him about the biscuits. He said, yeah, they cook the biscuits ahead of time, freeze them. He said, so Monday through Friday, there's no fresh biscuits. They're taken out of the freezer, put in the hot box for an hour so they can warm up. On Saturday and Sunday, there's actually somebody back there making fresh biscuits for you as you go. Bacon no longer gets cooked on the flat top. Bacon is completely cooked in the oven nowadays, and it's made ahead. When I was a corporate trainer for them, you know, we par cooked bacon for 7 minutes at 350. So basically it was like half cooked bacon. You put it on the flat top for 2 minutes, flipped it over, put a grill weight on it for 1 minute and took it off, and you had hot, fresh bacon. You had to cook it to order. There was no making extra bacon for orders that you didn't have. He said the same thing about the baked potatoes are made ahead of time, and then they are frozen and then brought back out. There used to be 3 large steam jacket kettles in the back, and that's where everything got made. Grits, gravy, pinto beans, ham hock sets, turnip greens, corn, carrots, yada, 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 all that stuff. Chicken and dumplings. They have 1 kettle left now. Everything goes in the oven. This is not the same Cracker Barrel, and this is why they're constantly getting complaints about the quality of the food. You know, this talk about the scratch cooking and all that, there's so little scratch cooking left. Yes, cornbread's still made just like it used to be. I said, you crack eggs, you use sugar, you use flour, buttermilk, margarine, and corn. He said, oh yeah, it's all still the same. That's all still made the same way. He said, all of our pies come in frozen. We no longer make pies in-house. That was something that, you'd have an assistant manager that would go around at these restaurant openings, and, he'd have a stack of fresh pies, and the whole gift shop smells like fresh baked apple pie. And, we're back there making more pies and more pies and more pies. This isn't any, this whole Cracker Barrel debauchery that's come to the forefront right now, this is nothing new. They've been on decline. Sales are indeed pretty flat. So I think pre-COVID, in 2019, it had $3.1 billion in sales, and their last year was $3.4 billion. So yeah, sales are increasing very slow. We'll call it flat. To put this in perspective, I found a TripAdvisor receipt from 2019. Signature dish of Cracker Barrel, fried catfish, comes with, fries, slaw, and hush puppies. Get 2 pieces. 2019, that cost $11.79. That same meal today will cost you $16.49. That's 52% more. Moreover, even when I was working at my home store, on a Saturday or Sunday morning, you got two setups on either side. One cooks for one dining room, one cooks for the other dining room. A good benchmark for a good Saturday or Sunday breakfast from 6 a.m. to 10 or 11 when breakfast started to die off was 90 dozen eggs, 30 dozen cases. He says he's consistently cooking 2 cases of eggs now on the weekends. They're not as busy as they used to be. Another one, your classic country boy breakfast used to be $10.99 on that same receipt. That same breakfast now will run you $15.79. So basically everything's 50%, 45 to 60% more on the menu now than it was in 2019. So foot traffic's down despite what they tell you. So these glasses are not mine, but they do remind me of the CEO's glasses. There's an episode I encourage everybody to go back and watch from a little over a year ago. Jim Cramer's interviewing her. I won't play this for you because I don't want to have any copyright or strike or something like that. When she talks about the company, it's like a stepchild that doesn't, most CEOs, presidents, and owners of a company, there's a bond with the company, with the employees, and she doesn't talk like she's engaged in these restaurants in day-to-day affairs. The entire board of directors are all on her side. She's not getting fired. They're all in on this together. Some of them have a little bit of restaurant background. Most of them have large corporation background. From telecommunications to healthcare industry. And you have got to have, as a person that was in the restaurant business for 35 years, you've got to have people with that kind of background. As a corporate trainer, they would bring the entire training team to the home office where we get a chance to work in the test kitchen with the corporate chef who was a Culinary Institute of America graduate, awesome dude. And they wanted our feedback. We were boots on the ground. We were breaking sales records every time we opened a store. We helped with some of the design of the kitchen and how to streamline and smooth things out, making sure that the recipes were good in real life and, that you could recreate that at speed. They were genuinely interested in always making it better. Nothing says good morning breakfast like scrambled egg whites, fresh fruit, spicy chicken sausage links. That, and there's nothing like a bunch of city people trying to be folksy, as they say. There's this overwhelming smattering of grandmas, grandpas, mamas. There's 2 back-to-back right there. This one's mamas as well. Stock's mildly down today. It's been pretty flat. Friday it stayed pretty firm. But there's your 5-year graph of Cracker Barrel. The Cracker Barrel of old used to do things like this. As they were growing, there was a guy that, if you ever had sourdough bread there's one family that makes that bread for Cracker Barrel. His name's Charlie Bay. I had the pleasure of meeting him many years ago. And he was baking bread out of his basement. He had like 4 home ovens hooked up, and he was making bread for a couple of stores as a test unit. And they said, we love this. We want to, he's like, well, I can't keep up. And they said, don't worry about it. We're going to loan you some money. We're going to invest in you. And they set him up with this huge warehouse, a gigantic, rotisserie brick oven. It had shelves in it that went around like this. A whole row full of mixers so he could make multiple batches at a time. And to this day, he still makes all their sourdough bread. Kenneth O. Lester was their grocery supplier, the regional or local to them, broadline grocery supplier like a Cisco or a U.S. Foods. And as they started Cracker Barrel started growing faster than their supplier could grow, they invested in them as well and helped them expand their warehouse, trucking, and everything else, and systems to help keep up with Cracker Barrel's growth, instead of just, you know, calling up whatever national supplier and said, hey, we want you to, you know, supply us all these things. You know, the founders of Cracker Barrel wanted to bring everybody along with them as they grew. They wanted their local residents to succeed, their local businesses to thrive with them as they grew. You know, you can go back and find some dirt that there was some lawsuits for discrimination and stuff like that. In the grand scheme of things, that was small compared to how they're being, you know, some employees are being discriminated against today just for being patriotic. Fun story about the antiques. Many years ago, before everything got digitized, there used to be a little tag. It had a metal ring around the outside, and it was red. And it was just tied to each and every piece of antique in the building. They all had that. And on one side, it would say what it was. On the back side, there would be a bunch of random letters. That was Cracker Barrel's way of keeping track of how much they paid for each individual item. So they used the word Cumberland. So C would be 1, U would be 2. So you could decode, if you knew that, what they actually paid for that antique. You know, there was one family that did all their antique shopping and thrifting for them and created like a warehouse. So when they were opening up a new store, they could bring all these pieces of Americana into the store, hang them up. And, you know, if they ever wanted to switch stuff out, there was always this one family, I can't remember their name, and I didn't get a chance to meet them, that has basically procured all their antiques for all these years. Pretty cool story. Okay, last thing. I'm not dumping on Cracker Barrel employees. I'm dumping on Cracker Barrel upper management and the board and all that. This is not the direction to take this company. It's, you know, the restaurant business is hard enough as it is. To turn a profit and to do the very basic elements of food service. Greet someone with a smile, sit them in a clean restaurant, get their order right, serve them up some fresh hot food that's delicious, and then thank them for their business on the way out the door. There isn't room for anything else. There really isn't. And if you do that consistently well, which they did for decades, you'll be successful. And if they could just get back to the basics and, you know, treat Cracker Barrel like it is. You know, it's an institution, not just in the Southeast, but all over the country. You know, the entire business was founded, like in that company manual, instead of having ESG stuff for you to learn and unconscious training, there was a story about a traveler, and it was like the focus, the background, the mission statement of the company, so to speak. And it said in clear, plain simple English that this traveler that was going down the interstate that could pull off, get a hot, fresh meal, and get right back on and go and know that they were going to get consistently good food and service as he went. The little country boys are pretty smart. Thanks for sticking with me. Sorry about the rant, and you know, this is a chainsaw channel, but you know, Cracker Barrel was a big part of my life growing up. You know, I worked there a lot. You know, as corporate trainers, we had to work, you know, opening week, we were scheduled 105, 110 hours, something crazy. And, but it was fun. We were young, and I got to see a lot of the country and got a chance to meet and work with some really cool people. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for watching.